Welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as I do every Friday at this time. We have a returning guest today. Zoe Smith was on our show, I don't know, last year at some time, probably not quite a year ago. And she is a COVID whistleblower. So already this video is going to come down from YouTube immediately. We'll be doing that right after this. Otherwise, I'll have my channel canceled again for medical misinformation. So lots of medical misinformation in this episode for people who like medical misinformation because it's very valuable to know it. But Zoe, welcome back. Tell us again about your book and everything, and go over your story again, your background for people who might not have seen you the first time.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Yeah. So for your audience who might not know me, my name is Zoe Smith. I did not expect to be in the position that I'm in right now. Just sort of, I landed here. I was a medical coder during the scamdemic. I knew that it was a scam right from the word COVID, but it was just kind of a function of being in the healthcare world for so long. I worked in the healthcare industry for the swine flu and for the Asian flu, and they were like non-events. So I figured the COVID thing would be a non-event, and I thought it would be another campaign to get employees vaccinated because my job was to bill to insurance. And so I was always aware it was part of my job to know like where the financial incentives were and how to capitalize on that for my hospital. A good coder will make money for the hospital, make money for the physicians, and then still know where the line is to not commit fraud and double bill and stuff like that. So that was kind of my job. And during COVID, I noticed they pretty much made murder legal. They made the hospital protocols legal. They made the ventilators legal. They changed how they diagnose things. They changed how they treat disease. They changed their whole stance on germ transmission. They started treating the hospitals like military prisons. They shut down half of wings and consolidated them and then put security on the door. They were kicking family members out that were trying to see their loved ones in the hospital. And I was reading the police reports of the police that were being called to the hospital to escort their family members out. Um, and that's really the moment that I became a whistleblower because I knew this was all wrong and people were actually dying and they were calling it COVID. And it was my job to label each one of those cases as COVID and get the hospital the bonus money, which is why I started to have a crisis of conscience because I didn't want to do that anymore. I felt like they're making me an accomplice to murder by putting me in this position. And I swore that at that time I kind of couldn't stop working. I was in a legal situation, divorce, all my finances were like frozen. So I couldn't really walk out right then. So I swore to be a spy at that moment. And that was like kind of the end of 2020 in the summer part, which should not have been flu season, but that's when our numbers started to go up, which was all due to the hospital protocols and the PCR testing and the masking and all that. So I started to look at vaccines, all the vaccines, not just the COVID-19 one, but all of them. And I started to realize, oh my God, they've been hiding the harms from vaccines the entire time I've been in the industry because they never taught us about any of these. They never teach doctors about any of these, and we never learned to connect the two. So I had probably seen hundreds of thousands of vaccine injury records and still had to put some other diagnosis on it to avoid the blame of the pharma harm. And then the COVID-19 one came out, and I started to see what the experts were warning about: the strokes, the blood clots, the seizures, the heart attacks, amputations, blood disorders, all kinds of stuff that we never saw before. And I started saying, this is the worst vaccine compared to all the rest of them combined. And that's really when I had to walk out because that's when the mandates were coming down. And either you had to get the PCR test every like multiple times a week, which I knew they were using to collect our DNA and send that to a database, which we might get into later. Or you would have to get the shot. They made an exemption process later, but they weren't allowing people to have exemptions for quite some time. And actually, the people who were fired over standing up to the mandates, the vaccine ones in particular, most of them have not been offered their jobs back. They've not been offered back pay. They've not been paid back for their lost vacation time or anything like that. But hospitals are trying still to recruit staff because they can't keep the staff because they don't treat the people very well. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell, how I became a whistleblower and how I ended up in the position that I'm in and why I wrote my book.
So before this began, before you started seeing this wrongdoing and you knew something was wrong and nobody was listening to it and then they tried to punish you for it, what kind of person were you? Were you like me, a lifelong rebel, or were you just kind of a normie and then this you had an epiphany because of this?
Oh, I was a lifelong rebel. I mean, I have an anarchy tattoo that I got when I was like 19. So
Oh,
I've been questioning government and authority for a very, very long time. I mean, they told me in high school, you're a rebel without a cause. And I feel like I finally found my cause. Um, so yeah, definitely a lifelong rebel.
well, that's good to hear. Say in the chat, some of the Brian and Debbie McCartney saying life are here. Yeah, there's plenty of us around. I just don't remember, back in the day there didn't seem to be many, or they weren't quite as vocal about it as I was. So since this happened, so you were retaliated against, and I know when we talked the last time, that happens to all whistleblowers, as you know, pretty much. What have you been doing? I think you had trouble finding employment, right? Do you think maybe you've been blacklisted, or how are you doing in that regard?
Well, for a very long time, I decided I didn't want to go back in to be a medical coder because they were still
Right.
making employees get vaccines as a condition of hire, even though like it went to the Supreme Court and they told the Biden, this was like when it was even the Biden administration, this went to the Supreme Court and CMS was told, like OSHA was told they didn't have the authority right out front. And then they had to go back to the Supreme Court, a second case. And then they finally said CMS, Medicare, does not have the authority to tell, because all of this was coming from Medicare is the key point I want to get across to people. They said they don't have the authority to make people get vaccinated as a condition of hire. But still to this day, there's a program called value-based purchasing that it's administered like statewide, and it's basically like a pay for performance program. And hospitals will get bonus money. So like 2% of what they make is taken off the top. Like all their Medicare payments are aggregated, and 2% of that is like withheld right off the bat. And then when they meet certain markers, behavioral markers, things like, did you administer the hospital protocols? Did you do the ventilators? Do you ask them about smoking? Did you track the COVID vaccine status? Did you, that kind of stuff? If they do really good, and one of them is vaccinating their employees, it's called the patient safety quality measure. So if they do really good on that, they get bonus money, and they actually are compared to other hospitals. So like there's like a bonus for doing better against yourself, and then
Yeah.
there's a bonus for doing better against other hospitals. So that was really why you had to get a vaccine as a condition of hire. It was coming from Medicare, and that program is still there, and it still incentivizes people. Um, and so I didn't want to work in the field because of that. And they just changed it. Like 2 weeks ago, HHS made this announcement about Medicaid and CHIP, but there's an analogous program in Medicare for people over 65 that most hospitals are subject to if they bill to Medicare at all. So if they're even registered for the Medicare program, they have to do these things. And one of them is still, I saw in financial year 2026 and for financial year 2027 that it still says COVID-19. Like one of the documents I saw said they're removing the employee COVID-19 thing, but the actual source document still says for a patient safety quality measure, they have to report employees getting the COVID-19 shot. So here we are 5 years later, and the condition why I walked out is still there, despite many years of saying, we removed it, that's not a thing anymore. It's still there. And then, interesting development, I decided I've looked at other jobs too. And long story short, I'm either over or underqualified for everything. So, like, I have a background in science, I have a college degree. They don't want you to work at a 7-Eleven pumping gas or being a cashier or something with a college degree. They
Right.
think you're underqualified, so they won't hire you. And then same thing with other science work. Like unless you have experience and a degree in that specific thing, then other people are going to outcompete you, and they'll be like, "Well, you're underqualified. You don't have experience in this particular thing. So go back to school and get another degree." But the thing about that was there was still mandates to get the shot for quite some time. And I'm at a point where I could never pay back that debt to go back to school. And now I realized after writing my book about the General Education Board taking over education, I don't think I'm going to get education in a place of higher learning. I think those are indoctrination centers now. And I don't really want to pay them my money to get some sort of certificate, because now I recognize what that certificate actually indicates is that you're going to capitulate to the system. You're going to think in the ways that they tell you to think, and you're going to enforce the policies that they tell you to enforce as a condition of holding the license. That's how they work. So, yeah. So, and then I thought if I do capitulate, and I looked at this just this last week. So everyone who's in medical coding right now, what they had to do to get certified is they had to walk into a testing center, they had to show their ID, they had to bring a little book, and then take a test. So to verify who you are, it was just paper ID. Now you have to walk into a testing center, you have to sign your name, so they get, which is in their biometrics policy. They have a biometrics policy now saying they're going to take that, they're going to take a palm vein scan and a facial scan. So you have to get a digital ID essentially just to sit for credentials. And I'm hearing people that work in the hospitals still saying that they've got this, and I know this to be true because I've looked at some of the programs, I've spoken a little bit about this, that medical record systems for patients are connected to Palantir technology. And that is getting, so when they take a picture of your face and say, hey, we want to know who you are, for any, like for the nurses or doctors or anyone who sees you as a patient, we don't want you to be just the barcode on a piece of paper. So we take a picture so we can see your face, and that's what you look like in the medical record. Well, they're taking that and they're analyzing it for biometrics and sending it to other places, matching that up with who you are and creating some sort of social credit score and making money on the back end, selling it to these big tech industries that need it to train their AI. So, even if I were to cross the threshold of getting the digital ID to get a certification to go back to work, they're probably going to make me give up biometrics as a condition of hire now. So like the whole, I'm actually thinking of it now as like a regime change, that COVID-19 was kind of a regime change. And the people who aren't going to go along with it are being weeded out.
Good way to describe it. There, Karen, it was. Well, I saw you on some other shows too, but obviously you're on the Union, and they wanted to. I think you were on the same show I was on one time, and you had to leave early or something. But Karen Carpenter, who you know, they've had you on Nights of the Storm a couple of times, said you were having trouble finding ways to sell your book and receive the payment. Who published it? Did you self-publish it, or what's up with that?
I self-published it. I got censored multiple times before I published it with editors. I tried to go through Trine Day, which I think you published through. They would not publish my book.
I have a couple. Yeah, I wouldn't go to Trine Day anymore. I have a couple of my books are published there, and it's no good paid. So, I'm not doing that anymore. I want to write for free. You go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. So, but they were the first place that I thought of. I mean, they're in my home state. They're a truth publisher, and I thought for sure if anyone's going to publish it, it would be them. But no, that was not true. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll do the self-publishing thing, but I still need to pay for an edit because I hadn't written a book before, and I just think a good book needs a good editor. So I thought, let me do that. So I actually found someone from Canada, and I thought, okay, this person isn't going to disagree with my politics because they're in another country. They don't care who our president is or if I'm on the right or left or no color like me. Then maybe they won't care. But actually what he did was he got to the point where I started talking about eugenics in healthcare, which goes back like over 100 years. It's basically like, that's where the ICD-10 coding system comes from. It was created by eugenicists, and it is I'm calling it a system for measuring their eugenics programs. And that's why the COVID-19 numbers were gamed the way they were, so that they can measure what they want to measure, make the numbers look the way they want. So they can lie with statistics. That's exactly what they were doing, are still doing. And I think I got off on a tangent there. I was supposed to be answering your question about the banking.
Well, that's okay. That's fine. It fit in. So you ended up publishing it
Yeah,
yourself,
that
but
guy, he actually, so to finish my story, he sent me back a book called Conspiracy, which says it basically gives you like which books are approved conspiracies and which ones which is not. So it says 9/11 wasn't a conspiracy, the RFK assassination wasn't a conspiracy, the Trump election wasn't rigged, that wasn't a conspiracy, but it said a Tuskegee was, and I did talk about the Tuskegee thing in my
yeah.
book. So I had such a hard time publishing it the traditional way that I thought, okay, I'll just do the self-publishing
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But I've even had problems with like Lulu Press and Draft to Digital
Mhm.
playing games with royalties where they're like, oh, we need a digital ID
Really?
thing in order to pay you, or we're going to take 30% off the top or not pay you at all until you submit this paperwork. Come to find out, it wasn't a digital ID thing at all, but there was this extra like thing that I had to go through in order to get the money. Lulu Press, they really weren't like promoting anything, and they kept playing games. Like right now, there's still $100 that I can't get because I didn't make enough money for them to cut me a check. So they're just going to sit on that
Mm.
money, and apparently that's what the self
You know,
publishers do
some
is
of the
they,
publishers do that, but Lulu shouldn't. Well, my friend basically set it up through Lulu, but I had to do that with Masking the Truth, my COVID book, because nobody else would publish it. I didn't
yeah.
want to do it, but I haven't had any trouble getting royalties. But he arranges that, and I've gotten less than 100. I get it every month, less than $100 many times, and so I don't know why they're doing that to you. They shouldn't. I've never heard about that before from Lulu.
Wow. That is really interesting because, yeah, I got that email from them multiple times. Oh, you didn't meet the threshold for us to cut you a check. So we're just going to sit on your money until,
Hmm.
next time. And I was like, well, I just pulled my book from your platform because you've already been screwing with me. So that means I will never get my money back. That's what you're saying. I will never get my money back. So
Hmm.
I've been trying to sell on my website, but that's what actually makes me a dangerous person, apparently. This is what the banks are telling me. I've gotten multiple, you're a dangerous retailer, you're a dangerous business, you're a restricted business notifications, because I'm one of the few authors who's actually selling my book on my website. So I have to have a payment processor. So I have to go through the
Uh-huh.
bank and apply
Right.
for all of that. And multiple times I get responses back saying, well, we can't associate with you because you're a dangerous business. So we shut you down. Square shut me down. Stripe shut me down multiple times. I tried another one called Adyen, which is like international.
Stripe, that's
So they
Stripe.
don't
'Cause
even
I use
check
Stripe for
credit. And I got
Stripe
an
is for Substack.
instant
How
denial.
did Stripe shut you down? I'm surprised to hear that. What did they do?
So the night that I launched my book, which was September 13th, 2024, I went on air live to do like a little launch party thing, kind of like the panel that you and I were on Union of the Unwanted, kind of like that. The next morning,
Mhm.
I got an email from, because I had a Give Send Go account, which is also connect that Stripe is their money changing service. And I was on Substack. So Substack still pays me, and that is through Stripe. But I
Yeah.
had a separate account for my Give Send Go, and they found my Give Send Go account and they shut it down, and they said you're a dangerous business. Apparently you can't have a retail and a donation platform at the same time. They think it's like double dipping or something, so they're calling it a dangerous business. And I had no opportunity to appeal with them. I emailed them, I asked to talk to customer support, and they said nope, we're going to shut you down in 2 weeks and we'll send you your last check. Later on, I heard from Give Send Go that it was not them, that it was Stripe. It was a Stripe policy. And I contacted Stripe directly, and they confirmed, yes, we did shut you down, and no, you're not allowed to appeal. And when I posted it on Twitter, and I just did an article with like my book and a dumpster fire talking about all the censorship I've been through, and um, a notification. There's a picture of the notification that I got from Give Send Go that says, well, it was a Stripe policy and it's Stripe that censored you. Um, and, it says restricted business. And same thing with Square Pay. So when I went on, this was like 8 months later, my website had been hacked and taken down, and I rebuilt it and I got a new payment processor. So, like, whole new setup. And I go on Grand Theft World, and the very next morning, I had sold 6 books, and all 6 of those sales were frozen. And I got a notification from SquarePay saying, you've been, um, You've been shut down. We're not going to pay you for about 6 months. You're under investigation. We're holding all your funds
Yeah.
because you're a restricted business.
Oh, that's awful. Gosh, you were, and there's somebody said, so have you been debanked as well? Did they mess with your bank account?
Very nearly. I'm not able to get credit
Mm.
card payment services. I'm talking with one more company now to see if I can get that to work. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to be able to make that work. I tried to open a seller account on Amazon so I could just sell on Amazon directly because
Mhm.
I have two things. I have a print book, so I could actually just put this up there as like a physical product, not do the Amazon thing where they print and sell the book, like the print on demand.
Yeah.
I could just do like a regular
Yeah.
seller account. And then I got this done. This is a new thing that I invented. It's just a USB drive and it has the ebook on there. It has the audio book. So the digital, because I don't have a way for people to pay for it on my website, and I wasn't able to keep my website up because it kept getting attacked. So I thought this way I can give the book to people in an electronic format, but in a physical form. And I was going to put this on Amazon because Jeff Bezos doesn't make these. So he can't really take a cut other than shipping and what he does for every other business. So I thought that would actually be a really good workaround for it. But they actually check facial ID now if you're going to do a seller account. So I won't be
Oh,
selling on Amazon anymore.
geez, that's but it's just an example of it. Everything you go through, even when you think with self-publishing, the advantage is that you don't have to go through all this stuff, but you're still going through a lot of ropes. There was a question Karen had for you. It was way back in the chat. Let me see what I'm going to make sure I get this before it gets lost in the shuffle. Here it is. Are you still planning the vigil on Valentine's Day? What is she talking about?
Yeah, so I
Here.
was going to do, I need to make an announcement on that. Thanks, Karen, for bringing that up. I actually just talked with one of my friends I was planning that with. So the backstory on that, I have a little video on my channel that says we're going to be doing a display at the Gates Foundation on Valentine's Day, and we're going to write the victims' names that I was collecting on bags and make luminarias, like little paper bags, and make luminarias like they do in Mexico for Day of the Dead. They make little pathways. And so we were going to make a little pathway with the names of the victims. So we would have like a physical representation of basically this mass burial, which we haven't ever seen because it happened in the hospital and they cremated everybody and buried it so no one could actually see it. But I think our healthcare system is still set up for them to weaponize it against us in the same way that they did during COVID. And so I want to keep that like in the forefront of people's minds. I wanted to make like a physical representation of it so we didn't just memory hold the whole thing. Because I think it changed a whole lot of our lives. Like some people lost jobs, some people lost family members. So
Yes, right
it's a
here.
big,
Yep.
yeah. And so I also wanted to do it like as a way to find the common ground because I've realized that over time, everyone's been kind of put in their own little echo chamber and we have to figure out like on whichever side of the political divide, there has to be some sort of common ground that we all can recognize. Okay, that really happened. That wasn't okay. And we're not going to let this happen again. And I think that's what we can come together under. That's what we can unify under. So rather than like driving people apart, I thought, well, how do we bring people together and kind of remind us like what got us into this and what are we even doing here? Why are we so intent on speaking the truth? And I thought, well, for me, that's the biggest thing is that people really died over this. This wasn't just like a pretend pandemic, like people like to say. Like people's lives were forever changed, and we can't let them kill our family and get away with it. And that's what's happening. So, unfortunately, the people that I was planning it with, we've had a little bit of a falling out, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get it done the way that we planned. So I'm trying to find a workaround. I'm still going to honor the lost, the ones that we've lost. I'm still going to do it. It's probably not going to be on Valentine's Day. It might be at the Gates Foundation. It might be at another hospital, but we will definitely make that happen. But we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure that out. And a big part of it is that my website kept being taken down. the more I put that out there, the more I got everything shadow banned and taken down. So I wasn't really able to get a whole lot of names. I wasn't able to get a lot of buy-in from other people to help me. Like, I really needed to circulate it like above my normal reach in order to get people to write names. But then my website kept breaking, so no one could send me names. So I feel like it's probably more censorship, but I can't prove it. So I don't want to say for sure that it was censorship because there's a lot of other factors.
Sure. Well, you see, Vince Agnelli, our good friend, has a suggestion. He means My Pillow. He's talking about Mike Lindell. Well, you can get on his platform. Apparently, Mike Lindell, who's under assault himself, has said that he puts books about freedom on his website. It's worth a shot,
Okay.
I guess. At this point, it's going
Yeah.
to have to
Yeah, I'm going to write that down. That's a
search
good
what you
idea.
get. Yeah, it's My Pillow. It's Mike Lindell. He's going to be more receptive to people because he's kind of his empire is because all because he questioned the vote. So I think he might be receptive to you, whatever he might have left in terms of influence and everything.
Yeah, I
I'm
spoke
trying to
with
think whether that.
Wise Wolf Gold about getting a donate link
Yeah.
because I'm looking into alternative currency because I'm feeling because I'm kind of out here on the I think Miriam Heinen would say I'm a beta tester. So I'm kind of one of the people out there like paving the way for others. And I'm realizing that the banks are not going to let us do our thing without checking us or shutting us down. So I really do think we're needing to move over all the way to alternative currency or even just cash fiat. So like I came out with a way for people to mail in payments so they can mail me cash, but I'm also going to have a donate link so people can donate, especially since the banks are telling me that I can't have a donate link on like Ko-Fi or Give Send Go or anything like that because that makes me a dangerous restricted business. So I can't have donations set up on something like that and collect credit card payments. So I really have to do some thinking outside the box. So I'm going to get that set up and encourage people to use alternative methods to buy things, which I think is just going to get to be increasingly more popular as the digital ID stuff starts coming down.
We have to be creative, unfortunately, and it's just I feel for you. And so many people are going through similar things, and this is your book should be of interest to the. Well, I kind of went through that with Masking the Truth, where I can't get a lot of people interested. I have gotten Sherry Tenpenny interested. I'll recommend you to her. She may be able to help. She has a pretty big audience, and see if maybe she'll have you on because it's right up her alley what you're talking about. She should be interested in your story. She may not have heard of you, but I don't have a whole lot of contacts beyond that. But Naomi Wolf is. Did you had some kind? I read something about you with Naomi Wolf. Did you have a contact with her or something?
Not really. She found one of the videos where I was talking about the Palantir tech that's built into
Yeah.
healthcare, and it's literally an AI kill chain technology that was used in Gaza. So I
Mhm.
was talking about the connection between what's going on right now in America, that they're building that same system that they're using in Gaza right here. They're already using
Mhm.
it for military. And
Right.
so Naomi found that video and circulated it on her platform and I reached out to her. My friend got her email from you, so thank you. And I reached
Mhm.
out to her, but I haven't heard back from her, so
Well,
didn't
she's
actually
better, especially if
connect.
it came from me. We were friends. I'm not sure we're friends. I've taken to writing quite a bit about Zionism and anti-Zionism and the disproportionate power of Jews on my website. And I think she's kind of embraced her Jewishness at this point, which I don't think she did before as much. So I think she seems to have really gone to the right. And just from what I've read, I mean, she interviewed Jonathan Pollard, who was the Israeli spy on her show. So, and again, I love her, and we just probably just disagree on that. So that might not have helped you if she saw my name. I don't know. I haven't heard from her for a long time, but hopefully, because somebody like she should be interested. All these people that are, but again, they weren't interested. A lot of them weren't interested in my book either, Masking the Truth. So it's kind of they may think, I know they think I go too far with it. they may think you go too far. I'm not sure, but
Well, I think even Children's Health Defense, like, so I was in the movie Vax 3, but they reached out to
mhm.
me before they published it, and they're like, we're not sure we can say what you said in the movie legally. We need to run this through our legal team. And they're like, can you give us some evidence for what you talked about so we can make sure that we're on the right side of this? And so I sent them a whole bunch of information on the NIH protocols, and they didn't actually cut anything that I said. So I think they did find that everything that I said checked out. But there's definitely like because I go as far as calling it murder. Like an attorney can't do that unless they know that the doctor knew that the doctor knew that they were going to kill the patient by administering the protocol. Then you can't call it murder. Um, but the victims who sat on the Vax bus, they said my family was murdered, and they asked me, "Do you agree with that?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Um, I don't care really what the legal definition of it is. I'm just going off my sense of right and wrong. And I think that doctors are smart people. I think that the evidence right in front of their own eyes was after a short period of time, you could tell that the protocols are not helping people. It's just killing people faster. And they're smart enough to figure that out and to change course. But they didn't do the right thing. They just kept doubling down on administering the protocol and labeling it as COVID and denying people the right to try, denying people alternative medications, any kind of alternative medication. So, yeah, I call that murder. And if that's taking it too far, then that's up to you to decide, I guess. I don't think that is too far. When you kill my family and you get away with it, or you kill other people's family and you get
Yeah,
away with it, I call that murder. I call that a crime.
I'll call it that too. You probably know I lost my brother to the COVID protocol, and it's terrible that it's unacknowledged, and there's so many other people. After that happened, I had heard from people all over the world that went through the same thing, and I had several of them on my show, including one from the same hospital that went through the same stuff. So it's a huge issue. I don't expect the lawsuits. I haven't heard anything about them. As you may know, Scott Shera, who was on my show again for the second time a few weeks back, maybe a month ago now. He was the
Hmm.
father of Grace Shera, who
Yeah,
was
very
a
familiar with that case.
right, and this hit some to me because I have a niece who has Down syndrome. Who, please say a prayer for out there. She's very bad shape in critical condition. She's been going through a lot this year, and that hits home, close to home. And Grace was killed by hospital protocol, like my
Yeah.
brother and so many others. And Scott recently lost in court over it with the hospitals, and he's not backing down. He's continuing to fight because we have a big battle there because the courts are dishonest and they're part of the thing. They're going to protect this system, obviously, and
Yeah. Yeah, I'm an
before
expert
that, I was
witness
going
on a few cases now, and that tends to be the case.
to.
They do everything they can. I mean, and it's corrupt all the way up to the judges. Like we found judges that need to be recused because they're part of RICO rings, and we have the evidence to back it up. So, yeah, the courts are absolutely corrupt. They're part of it. They're gatekeeping the information. They're preventing the truth from being heard in court. And we think that that's going to be one of the best things that we can do is actually get the evidence on court record so that people who maybe haven't gone down the rabbit hole far enough to find you or I could go to the court right now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and look at the evidence and figure out what really happened despite whatever the narrative says. Like at least that's a way to get it on the record in a way that other people will recognize or can recognize what happened.
Do you
And
see
they
that
won't
Vince
allow that.
Agnelli had another suggestion for you? You could contact Kate Galley. He said he's
I
sure she'll
don't
have you on. I mean,
know.
there obviously there are shows you can go on. It's whether we'll have enough of a platform. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. You're awesome. I want to have you on my show, actually.
Mike Lindell is a tool, Brian and Democrat. Well, he may be, but Mike Lindell is a damaged guy right now. He's been through the mill. He was very rich, and I think he's pretty much lost everything. I'm sure he's been debanked to back, and I think they took a lot from him and fined him and all kinds of ridiculous, irrational, unconstitutional stuff. But whatever you think of him, that's not right for them to do that just because he protested an election. That's our right to do that. But they're trying to make things illegal that didn't used to be illegal, as you well know. So,
Right. Well, what we have to
see,
keep in mind is the criminals are in power right now. So, of course, they're going to
mhm,
make crimes legal because they want to be able to get away with it. And they want us to look at them as the authoritarian figures, like, oh, well, you have the right to do that because you're the one who gets to decide what's right or wrong. So, whatever you do, okay, we'll go along with it. And that's really the paradigm shift that I think most people need to recognize is that, like, if we were in Mexico and it was the cartel running things, then you would recognize that that's a criminal doing criminal things and you wouldn't support them. But when it comes from the government, we just go along with it because what else are we going to do?
we don't have it. That's the problem is we don't, and there's we can all come together, but and I criticize the alt media because people like you should have a bigger platform because of what you're talking about, and obviously I think I should have a bigger platform. But my book, Masking the Truth, especially, should have been embraced by a lot of these bigger outlets, and it wasn't. You know, Sherry Tenpenny did, and some others, but in your case, they're not looking at you either, and they should be interested in that. But I think some of these people look at it as competition that they want to be the
I
one that's, and they want
I
to control
totally
Alex.
agree.
Yeah, Alex Berenson, for instance, but it's a former New York Times reporter. So he was on Tucker Carlson many times, a platform that wasn't available to us. And his books were good for what they were, but he started at a certain point. He wasn't like me. He wasn't questioning COVID-19 itself, which I do. And
I do too.
so that I think that's part of the problem too. And you as well. Um, we maybe go too far, and they're not willing to.
Yeah, I think it's the questioning the virus transmission thing, saying that COVID-19 wasn't a new disease. That's part of it. You're not allowed to say
Mhm.
that. Like I just read the Fauci book and a lot of what I wrote was in there. So like I know it's verified. I know they've done their research to back it up. And I think that's what makes my book dangerous because I was actually just thinking about this at the very beginning of the Trump administration when RFK had made the switch from running for president to getting the HHS
Mhm.
secretary position. It came out, and I think even CHD put this on their channel that Bill Cassidy was the one who told RFK, I'm gonna basically advocate to get you the HHS secretary position under these criteria. And they said one of the criteria is you cannot advocate or for an alternative healthcare system, and you can't advocate to take down the public health regulation system. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much like my solution at the end of the book is we need to go back to pre-Flexner report times when there was holistic and alternative doctors that you didn't have to access through insurance. You could just go to them personally, make a deal with them, and get care. And there were schools to teach these people that were not controlled through the AMA, that were not controlled through public health. So if this was free thinking people who are part of your community who rather than just 5 minutes face to face with you and then they shove a prescription and send you out the door, they actually know you, they know your family, they know your family history, you're part of a community with them. I mean, you would think of them more like a friend than someone you're seeking a service from. We need to get back to that. And no one is allowed to actually advocate for that. That's within the system. You have to use the judicial system, you have to use public health regulation. I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying you can't use the broken system to fix itself. That's not how it's going to work. The way I
I,
describe it,
I
it's like an octopus, and if you try and take out one of the legs, all the other legs are going to come around and try and defend it. And that's what we've seen time and time again.
absolutely. And there's a. Well, I was going to ask you about RFK Jr. because unlike most people in the alt media, I have a soft spot for him. I think he's basically good, and I think his hands are tied. I see Rabbi Shmuley behind him. That's his handler, and he, for whatever reason, he can only do so
Yeah.
much. And look at
I
as
think
far
so
as I
too.
know,
I think he's
yeah,
actually trying to do good things, but I think he's been hamstrung with all the other
yeah, he's
variables he's up against. And he actually, I think he is trying to get whatever he can pass
yes,
through to
whatever he
help.
can. Yes, yeah, he did get the hepatitis B vaccine eliminated for infants, which it may seem incredibly stupid that it was ever there, but they didn't want that gone. You got to keep it.
No,
It's terrible,
that's
but
one of the
he,
things I'm on a case with. It's for the nurse in Fresno who's blowing the whistle about all the women that are having dead babies after getting the COVID-19 vaccination. We're up like 450% dead baby rate versus pre COVID-19 vaccine.
Hmm.
And one of the things she has been targeted for by her employer is giving informed consent to new parents before they give the Hep B shot. And usually, after talking to her, they realize they don't need to give the Hep B shot because there's no risk. And then they're retaliating against her. They're telling her, you can't give informed consent. You can't tell parents that it's a lethal dose of aluminum that you're injecting into your baby. They're not allowed to know that. We want to keep injecting deadly amounts of aluminum into infants.
Well, I mean, it couldn't be more obvious. I mean, until 1989, I forget the number of vaccinations you had, but it was a very small amount. They dramatically increased it in 1989, and you can pretty much go back, and from that date, that is when the autism rate started exploding. It's very obvious there's a connection, and Rabo from Australia, I believe. Good to see you from the land down under. It says, I give RFK Jr. all the credit for reducing the schedule from 80 injections to 11. That's pretty impressive. And again, but the people that want me, they want him to do more. And of course, we want him to do more. I think he wants to. But
Yeah.
look he's had to kiss Trump's ass so many times. You know, he doesn't agree with all this stuff. He's desperately trying to keep that job because he
Yeah.
wants to try to do whatever good he can. So, maybe I
Yeah,
have,
he has to be a double agent. So he has to appear like he's on Trump's side, like he's
yep,
supporting everything. Like that's part of the game. I think he knows that. He's an attorney. He's a
yep.
very smart man. I'm sure he knows how to play the long game and how to do this double agent thing. I mean, I kind of had to do that for a tiny period of time when I was a whistleblower still working in the system. But I didn't have near the control that he has. But I mean, from every level, you can hear that there's people behind him that like they'll put stuff out that makes it sound like he's like doing this double speak thing, but it might not even be him that authored the paper that made the comment. It might just
Right.
be somebody else trying to slander
I
him
think
and
again,
make
I
him
think he
look
had
bad.
like when he was testifying to be approved. I mean, yeah, he said some ridiculous things, but they forced him to. He wanted to get approved. So I mean, we have you said Children's Health Defense. He has a record, a legacy of years working with them. We're going to court against these people. We know what his beliefs are. So you just have to have trust in it. But I mean, to me, I didn't realize it was that dramatic. But when you've cut the number of childhood vaccines from 80 to 11, that's very significant.
I never thought we
And
would see that. We should be having a party to celebrate that. And no
should
one's even talking about it. Because there's so much other stuff going on.
no,
They're still distracting us with wars and endless psyops. So
yes, yes, and the alt media is so full, and I've got a lot of black pillar in me, but I have some hope. I have to maintain some hope to keep my sanity. But this, we just kind of like for instance, when we're talking about Mike Lindell or something, like that, I was not a fan of him really, but I felt sorry for anybody who lost all that. And maybe it's all fake and he didn't really lose it, but assuming he really did lose all that, he paid quite a price for nothing really. He was protesting an election. And again, he was too loyal to Trump. RFK Jr., why? I mean, he's trying to do something. I don't understand why I don't give him credit. What other presidential nominee, member of a cabinet, has done something like that? Getting rid of the completely unnecessary hepatitis V infant vaccine, and slashing it from 80 to 11. That's a tremendous accomplishment.
yeah, like I said, I never thought we would live to see the day. Only 11 shots versus 72. That's monumental. I mean, that will change
Hmm.
people people's lives for decades to come. I mean, that right there is a legacy.
As my son likes to say, we in the conspiracy world, we can't take a victory. We don't know how to win anyone because our victory is going to be very small. Definitely. That's a victory. That's some kind of victory. And we don't get very many of them. So I think we need to, try to take it when we can. But so since you were here last, so you're still being retaliated against. And I didn't tell, obviously you're having trouble with your book. Or how are you able to earn income? Are you able to get any kind of a job, or what are you doing? And that I don't want to pry, but I just wonder how the job market is treating you.
So I've been recruited by some people to go back into medical coding. Up until this last week, the getting the vaccine was still a condition of hire. So, and I'm not certified because I figured, why should I pay for a membership and then do 32 hours of continuing education credits in order to maintain my certification when I'm never going to be able to work in the field again unless they change these policies, which they just now did.
Mhm.
I don't know what the math would have worked out to, but it would have been thousands of dollars and many hours that I would have had to put in for nothing. So I just looked at going back in, and they don't want to hire someone without recent experience. They don't want to hire someone who's not certified. I said, here's my conditions. You have to give me a vaccine exemption. I'm not taking a PCR test. And if you would pay to get me recertified, then I'll happily work for you. And they won't talk to me beyond that. So, like, the vaccine is still an issue. I can't tell them that I was an author. I can't say I stepped away. Like, when I say I stopped working in 2021, they know that's when the vaccine came out, and they practically hang up on me like, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." So
Yeah.
I don't have any evidence for sure that I'm blacklisted, but I have a feeling that I would be. And I'm going to have to try and get a job because I'm not able to earn any income. I thought the way that I had my book set up, if people were able to buy on my website and I were to sell, say, like 100 books a month, then I'd be able to get by. Because I set up so where like I could get by on like 1,500, less than $2,000 a month and be okay. But they've just made any attempt that I've done impossible to earn any income. So I've been able to eke out an existence doing expert witness work, like auditing and trying to help families that have lost people to COVID-19 protocols or anything related like that. So I'm trying to use my superpowers from the medical coding world that I was in for good. I'm trying to use that for good, and that's helping a little bit. But it's really not enough to sustain me. So I guess I'm looking
Uh,
at other options because with the digital ID thing, I still don't know if I'm going to be able to get back into healthcare. Looking at maybe going into dental coding because it's really similar, but they don't bill to Medicare. So the vaccine requirement isn't as there, but it's only like $20 an hour. So it's like cutting how much I can make by 50% from what I made prior to COVID. So yeah, it's not
It's
an
tough.
easy road out there.
Oh,
Definitely
it's not.
thinking outside the box.
It's just a crime that your ability to make a living is so dependent on you having a what's considered a controversial view. I think we talked about this last time, but how's your family situation? Do you have any family do you have a safety net there? Do you have a support system, or do they think you're crazy?
They thought I was crazy for quite some time, but actually, my parents have been really supportive. I
Oh,
lost my
good.
dad last year, but he gave me a whole bunch of
Oh,
money
okay.
to keep me afloat,
Oh, well, that's
paid for rent, paid for food. I would not have a roof over my head, and I would not be able to feed myself if it were not for my parents. So I
yeah,
have them to thank for their support. Whether they thought I was crazy at any point in time, I think they've come around to realize because my dad himself had a vaccine injury. He had a bleeding disorder, and we figured out that after he got the shot, his platelets came down. After he got the second shot, it went down again. And then they started working him up for cancer. They started saying, we're going to need a bone marrow sample so we can look for leukemia and stuff like that. And what they diagnosed him with was ITP, idiopathic thrombocytic purpura, which is vaccine induced. They just don't want to say it so that they don't have to admit that it's a vaccine
oh,
injury. But because it was, I think it was he got Johnson and Johnson first. I don't know if he kept getting the same brand. I don't know if he was even asking for the brand beyond that. But his doctor recognized it as ITP. And so we basically have a diagnosis that it was from a vaccine, and we know it was the COVID-19 one. So they've come around, and even my family, who, like my sister, who didn't talk to me for a while because she thought I was nuts when I started warning her about the initial phases of COVID and the lockdowns and the shielding approach that the CDC came up with, where we could be quarantined in our homes.
mhm.
I told her about that as well, and I don't think they were ready to hear that. They're on a different side of the political spectrum, but they've come around to recognizing that the work that I'm doing is valuable. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I do have some support at home, and I wouldn't be here without it.
Well, that's good to hear because I mean it's a lot of people are ostracized, and this is COVID, like Trump, both contributed to the dysfunction, the family dysfunction, which is everywhere. I write a lot about that, and there's so many fractured families because somebody voted for Trump or somebody didn't get vaccinated. I mean, we had to miss one of my niece's weddings. The kids and I weren't vaccinated, so we couldn't come. And so I don't. When you take that kind of step, you can't walk it back. That relationship will never be the same because
Right.
you kept me from your wedding because I wouldn't get some stupid shot, and you think I'm crazy for what I'm saying about it. And so, unfortunately, that's the reality we face. But so
Yeah.
since so
There
you
was
so
a
this
family member that I told about the shielding approach, and that person's job made them write down contact information in order to go to work every day. Like that to self PCR test and then self report whoever they had been around. And I sent them the original document from the CDC saying this is their shielding approach. This is why they're doing the contact tracing. I have more evidence if you want to look at it. I would really like to see you guys for the holidays, but I'm going to have to ask that you don't give up my name or my email or my phone number because that's an invasion of privacy and I know what they're doing with this. You could get me thrown in a concentration camp if you do that. And the response was, well, I feel like it's my ethical and moral responsibility to report. So if you are to come around my family, then I'm going to have to report you. And I went, okay, well, I'm not going to question your ethics, but my ethics are different. And I guess I'm not going to be able to come around. And no, you can't walk back from that. Like that, there's a meme going around right now that says, who you were during COVID, that's who you really are. And
yeah, it's hard to. I mean, the only way. I mean, again, I'm not going to. I mean, that's what it is because most they're buying the programming. People like us didn't buy it, but most people do. So I understand they're buying the programming all the time. They're conditioned to accept it, so they're gonna buy that. They're gonna they trust all these horrible institutions, and so I don't hold it against them. That means they're bad. It means they're gullible. They should think for themselves, but apparently most people can't. But it would be nice to hear some apologies. I think I think Vince said one of his friends uh, apologize to him for being right about the jab. Nobody's done that to me, but RB Ham, my friend in Canada, good to see you, brother. My from the Great White North, he said my dad wouldn't listen to my warning, had a heart attack after second shot, refused to believe the shot had anything to do with it. It's very sad. Now RB Ham, like you, paid a big price because he was involved as the Canadian trucker convoy up there. He was big in
oh,
that, and they
much respect.
yeah, and they fined him, I think, like $50,000 or something. So he's trying to get money from Give Send Go or whatever, and so help him out if you can. He's anybody listening because very and he was penalized. I think he lost his pension and all kinds of stuff that happened because of that. So just for standing up for whether it's something like that or whether it's something for truth and about COVID or anything else, it's very sad that people are retaliated against like that. Robin, I think it was Robin Lee. Thank you for the kind words, and also about my niece. And I think you were asking about Rumble. Yeah, my show is only on Rumble if Tony's actually here because I don't know how to I don't know how to do anything. So it's amazing that's on YouTube and it's with me, but it doesn't get there. But this show still is. I think Alex Jones's Prison Planet still has it over there, so I think it takes it, and Jeff Rentz's network does. So I guess more people probably hear it on reruns. And Ashley, good to see you, Ashley. You probably know Ashley too, Zoe, because she's with
Yeah.
Karen Carpenter. I actually received an
Yeah.
apology
Shout
from
out to
family.
Ashley too.
Yeah, Ashley's wonderful. So what I'm going to do here, I do this. I do this all the time now, and I don't know. I think people are getting jaded by it, but they like this originally. Where I'm putting the link to the show in the chat. Hold on a second.
Oh, so
And
people can join?
yeah,
Okay.
some people can join. So hopefully, if you
Right
have
on.
questions or you want to come on screen, please do. So I'd love to see some of you and or you'd see at least hear some of you. So please come and join the conversation. And if you have
Yeah.
questions or
Come on in.
comments for Zoe, Let's see. Okay, there's this. It's under my name and Tony's both, and what comes up like that. Robin says no one's apologized to her. Her liberal friends think she's crazy. Well, everybody thinks I'm crazy too. It's just, I embrace it. I think they're all mindless, and I think, yeah, me too. And we don't call them names. I don't call them names. I never say to them, "You're really stupid to be buying that." You know? Why are you buying?
Yeah.
How dumb can you be? You've had COVID, whatever COVID is. You've had it like 5 times. You've had a million jabs, and somehow it doesn't protect you. Does that make any sense? Oh, RB Ham. Okay, there we got the
It
courageous
doesn't make any
Canadian.
sense to me either, but I mean, it depends to what degree they've bought the narrative, I think.
Absolutely. Here's the most courageous Canadian trucker out there, RB Ham. Good to see you, brother.
Hi, much
Hey, how you doing?
respect.
Can you
Hey,
hear us?
thank you so much. Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Are you on the road now?
Yeah, I'm on the road, just driving back to Saskatoon with a load of lumber that I loaded in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan. So heading back to town, a couple hours out, then I've got a couple days off. I've got a show tomorrow night with Sleep Mansour and Eamon Mascuri, and I'm hoping that Anthony Harr from England will join, but I haven't got a confirmation that we're going to talk about Iran, the history of Iran, and what's going on there right now with all the infiltration of the Mossad and the CIA trying to institute a regime change, and Trump's vacillating between bombing them and now he's not going to bomb them. It's going to be a whole thing, but get back to the subject matter. Zoe, I have a podcast called Beyond the Pale, and I'd love to have you on sometime to talk about this stuff and make sure that more people hear about what happened to you, because what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, the way the protocols were and everything else, is an absolute crime against humanity. And all these people in the establishment and in the public health establishment here in Canada, there's been no accountability at all. There's been no admission that they were wrong. They are still going on. And the problem is the propaganda is so good, so unbelievable, that to this day, about 60 to 70% of Canadians believe that all those mandates and restrictions were reasonable and that they helped us actually get through the pandemic. They actually believe. It's just hard to understand because just through lived experience, people were not dying in the streets. It was not the Black Plague. It was anything but that. And even just doing a modicum of research, just a little bit of research, reaching out, trying to find the truth, it quickly became apparent that all they did was basically relabel the flu for about 3 years. Because if you looked at the influenza cases that they always track before that, they almost disappeared for 3 years, and they were replaced by the COVID influenza, and they used that through the stamp PCR test. It wasn't a pandemic, it was a test-demic of these PCR tests that the inventor himself, Gary Mullis, said should never be used for diagnosis. And I'd like you to address that. I'm really interested in that PCR part because when they rolled up, thank you.
Yeah, I'm really big on the PCR thing. I would love to come on your show. So
Awesome.
maybe Don or Tony can.
Yeah,
can,
I'll send you her
us.
information, RB.
But
thank you so much.
Yeah, so the PCR thing, that was really the thing that woke me up, because I was just talking about the contact tracing. That was the very first thing that kind of tipped me off that this was a scam, different than the other ones, because they didn't do that for flu before. But for COVID, they did. And I never even knew up until that point that they were using PCR testing for virus, like to identify a virus. Before that, it was always a genetic test. Because my background before being a medical coder was actually working in a lab. And we used to collect samples that would be run by PCR, but they were all genetic screens. They were like pregnant women coming in to test their baby to see if there was a genetic disease so they could decide if they wanted to move forward with it, or at least know like if their baby's going to have Downs or something. Or it would be for cancer screening. So like if someone in your family had like breast cancer, for example, then you could see if you had the BCRA gene, and then they'll, if you want to, then you could prophylactically have a mastectomy so you don't get breast cancer. That's what PCR was back in like 2004 when I was working in a lab. But fast forward to COVID-19, I'm reading a journal during the early phase of the COVID pandemic, and it says our LabCorp, which in America, it's a send out lab that does all kinds of testing. You've probably seen cars all over town. And they were partnering with a data mining company called Ciox that later got bought out by Datavant. So I call it the public-private partnership virus because now that information, it was to collect what they call the COVID-19 registry. So that was going to be your email, your personal information, everyone you've come into contact with. So like the phone apps that whenever you're going out in society, it'll like magically scan and see the IP addresses of everyone near you and say you've been exposed to all these people. That information went into that database along with a bunch of personal information. And registries were never used to collect personal information before. So this like tipped everything on its head, which is what tipped me off. And then I started hearing about all these false positives. Well, when you work in a lab and your job is to do quality control or to make sure every day that you do quality control and document that to maintain your lab licensing, you know that false positive means the test did not work. That means your quality control failed. So whatever the machine is doing isn't telling you what you think it's saying. So it doesn't matter what kind of test it is. If someone says false positive, they mean that the test did not work. So it doesn't have any meaning to it. So it can't be used for diagnostic. It can't be used to track a pandemic. Can't be used for nothing. Throw the results in the garbage. That's what they mean. So when I found that out, I'm like, well, they're obviously running this test for something. And then they changed the guidelines for COVID. And this is an exception to the rule. Same exception for Zika and for another disease that Fauci was working on. And it was doctors don't need to actually do the PCR test. And this was global. So this was in Canada, this was in America, this was in Australia. They didn't have to do the PCR test. So why are they pushing the PCR test on everybody? It took me years to find this, but I actually found a document from the CDC that said every certified lab in America has to collect a DNA sample, which PCR is really good at getting. That's actually what PCR was developed for. That's what Kary Mullis developed it for, was to basically amplify DNA so it can be studied. So that's what it's really good at. So what they're actually doing was, instead of running the test to tell if you had COVID or not, that was just to make the facade of a pandemic. The real thing that they were doing was they was collecting our DNA. They were sending it to multiple gene banks. NCBI, GISAID was one of them. BGI in China, which was formerly the Human Genome Project, is another one that made a whole bunch of PCR tests and sent them to America. And our own American military put out a counterintelligence notification saying that China is basically like on notice as being a foreign terrorist because they're collecting American DNA via the PCR test. And they named BGI specifically in that document.
Well, and it turns out that Operation Warp Speed was I was going to say, it turns out that Operation Warp Speed itself was a Pentagon operation. RFK Jr. let that know. I did a show about a year ago showing that it was across the world. All the countries were the response to the so-called pandemic was being run by the military in all these countries, and they used it. They also used the opportunity to test psychological operation programs on the public to coerce them into getting the vaccine. In fact, here in Canada, we had a nudge unit, they called it, where the government worked with public health for messaging to scare the people enough to get them to go go get tested and get the vaccine. It's unbelievable that they got away with it, and they still have. And more to the point about the PCR thing, that Fauci himself was caught on camera talking about the PCR technique, and he said if you run it as so many cycles, right, up to 40, 45. He said the only time it's any good for anything is 25 to 30, and if you run it at 40 to 45, all you're picking up is dead nucleotides. And he basically said that if you had a cold 6 months ago, you will test positive for a virus, even if it's no longer in your body.
Right. And everyone gets caught up on the cycle threshold, and it is a way to dial up or down the positive or negative results on the test. But what people don't know is that they've had that with antibody testing since the early 80s. I did an interview with Dave Rasnick, who worked with Kary Mullis and was in biotechnology as a chemist. And so he had his own lab tests for a long time. And of course, they sabotage every business he tried to do, just like they're doing to me. I even told him what's going on. He's like, yep, that happened to me. So I guess I'm over the mark. But so in his words, he says the PCR test is garbage in, garbage out. And what he described to me is how they got the original template to tell if the test is positive or not. They basically, they took their sample from the source patient in Wuhan, right? And so they took a BAL sample. They like sliced up all of the juice, basically, added a whole bunch of stuff, and then got a sequence. From that sequence, they took a tiny little section. They said, this is the virus. And then they sent it through like basically a computer program, which is AI, like the only kind of computer program that would be able to analyze that much data. The only kind of computer programs that look at DNA, they're AI. So this thing came up with a consensus sequence. So they essentially set the template for the positive result as something that they would find in the general population frequently. And then they set the cycle threshold to dial that number up or down at the touch of a button.
Chris Buchan, I wonder where you were, Chris. I haven't seen you lately. He said, tell Zoe she wants to get her insurance sales license. I can hook her up with a job, pays pretty decent. Okay, so that's and RB, while you're there, type in the link to your GiveSend. Type in the chat. Type in the link to your whatever you have, GiveSend Go or whatever, and I'll put it up on screen. Maybe you get a few contributions.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as I can't do it while I'm talking to you guys.
Right.
I can only and I'm driving, so I'll have to wait for my next stop.
Right, exactly. We don't want you doing that yet.
But it's not hard. I mean, if anybody wants to help, just go to www.givesendgo/RBHAM, all in capital letters, and you'll find me. And that would be very helpful. Every little bit helps because when the mandates restrictions came in, I was one of those people that I learned about this stuff. I started going online and fighting the people online, whatever. And when they started bringing in the censorship, it wouldn't, and we're kicking people kicking people off their YouTube, whatever, and censoring you on Facebook and stuff. I had enough, so I went out into the streets with my megaphone to tell people directly what was going on. And I met other people with like-minded, and we started a very big protest movement here in Saskatoon. And I was working as a school custodian at the time, following all these stupid hygiene rules that I knew were bullshit. And because I would not stop what I was doing, because I was committed to what I was doing, because as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, it is your legal duty to, as a citizen, to uphold just laws, but it is also your duty as a citizen to protest against unjust laws. So, and I knew this was these mandates restrictions were unjust. So I kept fighting it, and I ended up I lost my job as school custodian and had to go back to driving a truck. And so that's what I'm doing now. And it's a tough job because I'm an old guy, 62 years old, and I got to strap down lumber and steel. And I basically got to work for the next 3 years until I'm 65. And I can finally maybe retire, but it's not going to be as comfortable retirement because when I lost my job as a custodian, I lost my pension too. So it's sad, and the $50,000 I owe, the CRA, which collects for the government, hangs it over my head, and so I never get income tax back. I don't get any. I can't go and get a loan. If I go to a bank and say I need a loan, they say, "Oh, you have this CRA stuff on you owe all this money to the government. You can't get a loan." So basically, that's why I have to do the GiveSend Go. It's not out of. It's not. I'm not grifting. it's much appreciated.
I'll type it in for you here. Is it just GiveSend Go or is GiveSendGo.com?
Yeah, www.givesendgo.com/RBHAM, all capital letters.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it had that. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, guys. And yeah, because about a year and a half ago, I hurt my knee at work, and so I was off work for about 6 months, and that's when I decided to start doing my podcast. Because getting back to the point here, my friend Mark Friesen, who I met when I was doing the protest, and we started doing town hall tours and talking about the whole pandemic and how it was married with Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and how they were using this as a test case for basically total digital ID control, total control of the population. And they were using this the pandemic as a way to, get the public to go along with this. So we would do these town hall tours, and he was from the right, I was from the left, and we put our differences aside because we agreed on this anyway. So about a year and a half, about 2 years ago, we were both running for the People's Party here in Canada, and we had a big election day rally, or election day meeting here in Saskatoon at the Saskatoon Inn, just when the pandemic was at its height. And all the other parties weren't doing that, but we did. And so about, I don't know, 300 or 400 people showed up at this ballroom. And after that, Mark got horribly sick, and I think he was poisoned that night because he was Mark Friesen, the Grizzly Patriot. He was bigger than me. He had his own podcast. He was nationally known. He was on the Alex Jones show a few times. Anyway, he got really, really sick. And like a dummy, he didn't call his friends and say, "Hey, I'm sick, so there's something wrong." He called the ambulance. The ambulance took him to the hospital. And when they got their hands, when the establishment doctors got their hands on Mark Friesen, the Grizzly Patriot, they basically they put him through the protocols. They put him on the ventilator. They put him into an induced coma using fentanyl and ketamine. He kept him that way for 6 months. It's amazing he survived. But he did come out of it eventually, the coma, and he did get back to health because we found a doctor who wasn't an asshole, who basically said, "Oh, he has bacterial pneumonia. Let's treat the pneumonia and we'll fix him up." But it was too late. Being in that coma for 6 months fucked his mind up real bad. And now he's got dementia now, and he can't communicate properly, and his whole life has been destroyed. And he too is a victim of the protocols because he got sick. He trusted. He went to the hospital, and because they thought that they could make an example out of him because he was a COVID-19 denier, and they had a field day with him. And of course, through all in the media here in Canada, here in Saskatoon, he was put through the ringer saying, "Look at this COVID-19 denier. He got COVID-19. Ha 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 ha." Well, he never got COVID.
Not even Grace Shira or another case with I did an audit on another girl with she was disabled, mentally disabled. She was 27, and she was actually in the hospital for 40 days, and they murdered her. She had more fentanyl in her system than George Floyd when they murdered her. So that's the most horrific case. 6 months of being given that much fentanyl and paralytic. No wonder he's got brain damage now from that. That's I don't know. I didn't know how a month was survivable, let alone 6 of them. Oh my God.
Yeah, so he was okay for a little bit when he came out of the coma, and even did a few more appearances talking about what happened to him. But he quickly went downhill. Now he can't communicate at all. It's really sad because he was one of the strong proponents for the freedom community here in Canada. And he was like taken off the table by the powers that ought not be. They got their hands on him. And then to this day, there are people out there who say, "Oh, he's got dementia because he had COVID-19. The COVID-19 gave him the dementia." Because when they put him in the hospital and put him in that coma, they tested him, of course, with PCR, and he tested positive for COVID, right? Of course.
Yeah.
So they say
medical gaslighting is what that is.
It's just horrible what they did to him. And so, he's probably not the only case. And I know Don lost his brother through the protocols. My dad had a heart attack. My sister got a blood clot in her eye. Her husband had a heart arrhythmia after he took his vaccine. And I was warning everybody about this, but they wouldn't listen because that's vaccine denial. You can't be a vaccine denier, right? And so it's just horrible. You try to do your best to help these people, but they're so propagandized by our mainstream media and by the culture at large. I take it back to remember, and Don can appreciate this because he interviewed Cindy of the Brady Bunch a few times. But there was a show called the Brady Bunch, and one of the one of their shows was about how all the kids get measles, right?
Right,
Mhm.
right.
And so, and then they get measles, they stay home for a few days, they nurse back to health, and they get immunity. They're like, I got measles naturally, I got mumps naturally, I got everybody in my generation. It was not a life-threatening thing. It was fun. You got to stay home and eat ice cream for 3 days, and then you were fine, and you had lifetime immunity. So now they're talking about measles like it's some kind of deadly thing that's going to kill everybody in the world.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
and they smear RFK Jr. with that too. They've tried to make it that he's attempted to try to talk sense on it. He knows. I remember having measles as a kid. It was a very lighthearted thing. Bill Cosby had a skit about it on one of his comedy albums, the Brady Bunch episode. Nobody looked at measles as anything, but it was kind of a funny thing. Oh, you got measles, you get to eat ice cream. Now they're acting like this is a deadly thing, and maybe I don't know. Maybe they've got some new kind of thing where they put in the measles vaccine, so maybe there's a stronger version of measles. But I put the link back up in the chat, guys, for again. So I'd like to see more of you want to come through here. Good to see RB here, of course. If RB can come through while he's driving a big rig, come on. Some of you guys come on and give your 2 cents worth.
Yeah, it's a Freightliner.
I wanted to add too. So where the PCR test is going, they told us day 2 of the Trump administration when Larry Ellison said we're going to be able to do a blood test to look at your genes, and we're going to be able to create a anti-cancer vaccine to your individual genome. That's why they were collecting all the DNA, because they needed that information. And it says in the gene banks, they need that information so they can train their AI on the population genetics. And so they can develop drugs and therapeutics and vaccines to our individual genome. So that's really what they were doing the whole time. I
think it's part of their depopulation agenda. They call it cancer vaccine to give you cancer because they want the remember Bill Gates in his TED talk talking about net zero, and he talks about all these things, including the human population. He says one of these things have to get down to zero so we can have a more sustainable future, and they laugh about it because I firmly believe they have a depopulation program going. I think the protocols for COVID-19 got rid of a lot of senior citizens, which they don't mind because it helps with they don't have to pay out all the Social Security. I'm pretty sure the Chinese government used that to get rid of a lot of their senior citizens. I mean, it's just
talks about that, and even Gates wrote. I think Gates himself wrote an article about I would kill myself if I'm over age 74 because you're useless at that age, and that's basically what it said in the article. Like if you're over that age, then you should just off yourself because you're no longer good to society. And I don't know why people aren't still talking about that the same way they were talking about the TED Talks, because that was the goal. And I mean, look, the life expectancy has been reduced since the last 5 years more than it has in the last 80 years, something like that.
Yeah. Yes.
That's true. Remember how we were here in Western society? We were so happy. We were so proud that people are living longer, and all that stuff because of all our good nutrition and our good.
The average person is unaware that life expectancy rates have been dropping. I try to tell them, people are living longer than ever. No, they're not. Are you aware of? And you try to tell them about childhood cancer rates exploding. I get these heartbreaking things all on my social media because I end up, hearting them or something because I feel bad. But they're showing so many little kids with brain cancer and aggressive brain cancer. So I've never heard of this before. I never knew one kid that had that ever. It's common now. I mean, I'm talking about infants even. How do you possibly develop brain cancer as an infant? That doesn't make any sense. But all they do is show St. Jude commercials, and okay, it's great. St. Jude doesn't charge anybody. But childhood cancer rates are exploding. Why? No one questions it.
Yeah,
well, it goes back to you can't question the
dogma
of the cult.
And I wish more people would wake up to it. But when I have some success, I've woken up some people.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, you're breaking up, RB. So, well, it's got to be tough when he's on the, when he's driving a truck like that. I'm amazed we get what we get from him.
Yeah,
because the guy's working all the time. He's his one night off is Saturday when I'm on a show a lot of times. It's just a podcast, but he's on the road otherwise. So my hat's off to you, brother. I mean, working a physical job like that, especially when you're not young anymore, and
All right, maybe I'll duck up now.
Okay, brother. I appreciate it. Thanks, RB. And again, we're leaving that up there, the give, send, go thing for / RB Ham, because anything you can do. I mean, he hasn't told me, but I mean, he's still doing that kind of physically labor job. And I know he lost some kind of pension because of it. So, that's a pretty stiff price to pay for protesting, to lose your pension. It's ridiculous.
I had wondered about what happened to the Canadian truckers, because I knew they got debanked. I knew they got censored, and their government is even worse than ours, if you can imagine that. So it's good to connect with someone from that and learn what's really happening, and that they're still struggling. That's really disheartening that it hasn't just like gone away. I mean, even Trudeau's not even in there anymore, and it's still going. So I guess their government is the same as ours. Doesn't matter who's heading it up. It's still going the same way.
No. Least they could do is issue some kind of, relieve or just, dismiss all those absurd fines for people like him. I mean, that's ridiculous. And you're punishing people for holding an opinion that, I understand Canada doesn't claim to be like ours. We supposedly have a right to peacefully protest. So we found out on January 6th, you really
Not
don't.
so much. Yeah.
Not so much, right? So, I mean, so I'm looking through here. It's good to see some people I haven't seen in here a while.
Yeah, Owen from InfoWars had to go to jail over the J6 thing, just for standing there and trying to do crowd control. He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, he was telling people not to go.
Building.
Yeah, he was the videotape of him saying, "Don't go in the building," and they still sentenced him like 30 some days. Right? I mean, it's outrageous. Raybo is talking about, and Vince has talked about Scott Ritter's bank accounts. They seized his bank accounts today, and this is a pretty. Billy Ray, stuff when you're writing. They again.
Well, if you're paid by Soros, then you get a free pass.
Yeah. How old is Gates? As he said, no, Gates is Robin. I think he's maybe 70, something like that. But and what I want to see is what happens when Rahm Emanuel's brother. I think it's Ezekiel, the one they have three Emanuel brothers. Rahm Emanuel is this mobster wannabe who used to be the Democratic Party, who literally is like out of central casting. He wants to be a mobster. And then you have Ari Emanuel, who I think is the agent in Hollywood, and then it's Ezekiel, who's a big shot in the medical community. And that guy, whoever, I think it was Ezekiel, wrote an article some years back how he didn't want to live past 75. He's got to be getting close to that now. So we'll see if he should just leave the world, because he's basically trying to convince people, don't keep people alive. You don't need to be here and all that stuff. And I hate that. You mentioned eugenics. That's right out of the eugenics playbook.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it was Peter Thiel who did a talk for some high tech people. And he was talking about the future of transhumanism, how basically what they're going to do to the useless eaters, us, is stick us in virtual prisons, not actual prisons like a quarantine camp like we were envisioning during COVID. They're going to put us in virtual prisons, because the actual prison is going to be inhumane. But you can put the useless eaters into a virtual one and hook them up to the matrix, and they don't know they're in a prison. So it's so much more humane, but you can cut them off from the rest of society where they won't hurt anything, where their free thinking thoughts won't infect the rest of society, like it just completely Orwellian stuff.
It's horrible. And so this is all the same line of thought of wanting to punish people like that. And again, you didn't used to see that in this country, where you didn't. The closest thing we can think is back in the 50s with the blacklist, whatever blacklist there was in Hollywood. Not quite the same thing if people aren't hiring you to write a movie. I mean, you can say it's wrong, but it's not at the same level. When you're punishing people, especially to the point of taking their bank, not letting them bank. And we've seen this over and over again. And it's this really the beginning of what a social credit score would be. If they introduce digitalized currency, people like you and me and everybody listening to this show, I don't know what we're going to do. We're not going to be able to have access to our money, because we'll all have sure, incredibly low social credit scores.
Yeah, I'm sure just right out the gate, I'm going to have like negative social credit for what I do. Probably the whole trucker protest, anyone, in the health truth. I call us spoiler alertists, not conspiracy theorists. But yeah, all of us spoiler alertists will be punished for wrongthink. And I mean, again, that's pretty Orwellian. And we thought we lived in the land of the free. We thought we had free speech, but turns out, nope, you actually don't. You get debanked, you get censored, you get told you're not allowed to live in society if you think like this.
No, and it's again, there's something really wrong with that. I don't care what it is, like if they had, I thought the BLM protesters and Antifa protesters were ridiculous. I think they're hired by somebody else, but I wouldn't want anybody debanked. I would because they were at a BLM or Antifa protest. That's ridiculous. When you affect people's life like that, and the iceberg. I mean, I think the officer was ridiculous. I don't know what he was doing, shooting somebody in the head that was an American citizen. That's crazy. So I'm not left or right. I'm populist, but those kinds of things are wrong. And we see that it seems like we have a real hard time, especially if we believe a certain way. If we're on one side of the spectrum, where we can, like the people who, in your case, everything that happened to you, um, people who disagree with what you're saying are fine with that. They don't
Yeah.
they're because they don't have the capacity to put themselves in your shoes. All they look is, oh, she deserved it. Stupid, she shouldn't have doubted the science, and because they actually think they're right and they haven't slowed down. It's amazing. They should all be issuing apologies to us, but it's amazing how some of these people still think they're right. I don't talk to them about
Yeah.
it anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't try and reach them anymore either because they've made it pretty clear that they don't want to be reached. They don't want to be helped. And you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. So I've kind of
Mhm.
given up on trying to reach them. And I've just decided, well, if something in your life brings you to this content and you're willing to be open-minded about it, then great, welcome. We're not going to judge you wherever you're at on the path. But yeah, it would be nice to get apologies from people, but I still get comments on Substack about how I'm a murderer, about how I'm a grandma killer, about how, oh, I'm a
Mhm.
crazy anti-vaxxer and I'm killing all these people. How do you deny that all those people died of COVID-19? And
Mhm. You're
there really are
denier,
some
yes.
people. Yeah, and I think it comes down to, like you asked me at the beginning. Well, were you a rebel from the beginning? I think that's kind of the prerequisite is, are you one of those people who's allowed to, or who has the ability to look at new information and that has the impact to change or ability to change your worldview? Will you change your worldview based on new information that you come across? And will you take that in with an open mind and process that and come up with your own decision on what you think of that information? Or do you
We
just
got
go along with what you're told?
well,
And
we got the
apparently, if you don't go along with what you're told, um, this is the consequences.
no, and I just want to tell Raybo, my friend, I think he's talking to me. I don't know what he suddenly said. I already know you have a problem with God, Don. You wear it on your sleeve. I have no. I'm very spiritual. I'm a very strong believer. My faith is very. I write about it all the time. Maybe you don't read me on Substack, Raybo, but I think you were talking to me. You said Don. So, yes, I'm a strong believer, buddy. Let's see. We got Karen Carpenter. Here she is. You know her. Good to see you, Karen.
Hello.
Karen,
Good
hey
to see you,
Karen,
Zoe. Hi, Dawn.
good to see you too.
I dropped my camera and boy, is it fuzzy now.
Oh, it looks good. It looks good.
Oh, well. I had
That's
a
your
wild
normal
day with
day.
my grandson. Wow. Whew.
Hmm.
But I'm here. I've been enjoying your conversation as much as I could. I'm gonna throw some wood onto the fire here about RFK Jr. I have followed him closely, and I did put in chat there that I gave away about a dozen copies of the real Anthony Fauci
Mhm.
when it was
Mhm.
new. And
Yeah.
I was sad to see him go into politics, actually. I don't personally think that was his plan, but I know people will say that was his plan all along. But as Don was saying, he has decades of good service that was more or less under the radar. And if you haven't seen Dark Waters about the Teflon, the DuPont Teflon, and it's well worth seeing. And he played a key role in that, and a lot of other court, trials against pesticide companies and vaccine companies and big polluters and cleaning up the waterways. And I know he's a real mixed bag, and I certainly don't agree with his stance on the non-Irish, and other issues. But I do think he has made some improvements, and people will say, it's not enough. It's not enough. Well, look at this machine we're living with, this Leviathan that is so entrenched, the medical industrial complex. Some people think it's the oil petrodollar is all powerful, or other factors are all powerful. But personally, I think that the pharma lobby is more powerful than any lobby when it comes to Congress and our leaders, and the grip it has on us, because it's also the medical system now. It's all become completely vertical from the bottom up, from the cradle to the grave, and the propaganda machine. So I look at pharma and the medical industrial complex at this point as having a huge grip on us. So I don't think there's any person that could walk into a place like that would be allowed to, that could say, okay, no more vaccines. No more recommended vaccines. We're going from 72 to 0, +4 for recommended for pregnant women now. And we're not recommending any of them starting today. Are they going to let him live? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that would be a death sentence, because you're right. The pharma cartel is the most powerful cartel in the world right now. They're not just in America. I mean, it was started with Warburg from Europe. And so this is a global pharma cartel. This is not just America. It's not just Canada. It's everywhere. And it's the most powerful in every country, including the narco countries that are working with them, because guess what? They need fentanyl too. They need opioids too. So,
we were on with John Potash last week, and he one of his documentaries and books are how drugs have been used as a weapon against us, basically through recorded history. And I think personally, it's up to us on the ground, one by one, in our families and our friend groups, to spread the word and to change our opinions little by little. I don't think that you can pound somebody over the head with a hammer and expect them to believe you. Unfortunately, a lot of people wake up through an unfortunate incident with their child or someone that they love, and it takes time, and a lot of people have a lot of regrets. But so to me, it's up to us. It's a consciousness raising, person by person. And you were talking about not being able to get the word out, and there are some people that absolutely will not listen. But then I've had others come up to me in private and tell me, thank you, or what do you suggest for my baby? I know you know a lot about this, which they may not do publicly, but they have heard me in my private life.
I think there's a lot of that. I think that's part of the PSYOP, actually. And Dawn, maybe you can speak to this too, because I know you must have experienced this for far longer than myself. But I'm getting the feel that it's kind of intentional, that we're meant to feel like we're not making a difference, that our numbers are artificially deflated. So we can't tell how many people are actually seeing what we post. Like our numbers probably look intentionally lower for subscribers, for view numbers, all of that, because they don't want us to know that we're actually reaching people. Because when I look at my numbers for sales or for subscribes or likes or anything, it looks really low. In fact, when I went on with Rachel's show on Spotify, she looked me up on Google and she's like, wow, I got all kinds of hits and I could find you, but then your numbers look really low. Why is that? And then she kind of answered her own question, like, oh, well, obviously you've been shadow banned, and so your numbers probably look low because of that. And yeah, it's obvious. I think they want us to feel like we're not getting through to people. But when I go out in real life, people are like, oh, I've seen you on something. And I mean, it's not like I can go out in like anywhere and people recognize me. I'm infamous, not famous, and I'm never intended to be either. But just, so it's not something like where people will just recognize me when I go out. But people who are open to this information, more of them have seen it than I'm aware of. So I think that's part of the psyop, is that I'm meant to feel like I'm all alone speaking into the darkness and no one's going to listen to me. So I should just give up and go home and do something else. But I think that's not the reality. I think I'm actually reaching more people than they would ever allow me to know.
I think that's why, like, as you were saying, that's why they're coming so hard at you, because you are reaching people and your information is key.
Sure, and you were inside. You had firsthand experience with this. But Raybo, my heart goes out to you, brother. He said he has a grandson that has permanent paralysis, AFM, from Trump's mandated MMR vaccine for toddlers. That's the reality. What some people go through. I don't know. It doesn't happen that often, but if it happens to your grandchild, it means everything, right? And it's just awful. So if Bobby Kennedy could have eliminated over 60 or however many vaccines he eliminated, I think that's headed in the right direction. We still need to do more, but that's
Yeah,
more
that's
than
hero
anybody else's.
status.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's more than anybody else's, Dan. I don't know what people want him to do. So yeah, maybe it's
Well, it's
yeah, I
important
don't.
to remember he's not God. He's not all powerful. He can't just wave his arm and make pharma go away tomorrow.
Now,
Like,
if you
he's
saw
still
those
under
hearings
constraints.
when he was this, you understand who he is, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. His uncle and his father were icons in the Democratic Party for a long time. Every single Democrat viciously attacked him, and half the Republicans. But I mean, there was not one sympathetic thing at all. His entire family pretty much has. And last month, and tragically, Tatiana Schlossberg, who's Caroline Kennedy's daughter, who unfortunately died, but she died of cancer. And again, I'm not going to say it was turbo cancer, but she was fully jabbed. And she basically blamed her cancer on him, it seemed like, in the last article she wrote in the Atlantic, where she lashed out at him, which is a strange thing to do if you're dying from cancer, to be lashing out at your cousin. But that's what she did, and said it was his irresponsibility and not trusting science. Well, I feel awful for you, but science didn't work well for you. That's, you're the one that's dying, not him. I don't understand that, but his entire family did that. If you remember, a couple of years ago, one of the last really mysterious of all the crazy, strange, suspicious Kennedy deaths, you had his sister, Kathleen's granddaughter, I believe it was. I can't forget her name. Somebody
I
in the chat
think it
probably
was
remember.
his niece and his niece's son.
Yes, his niece's son. So it was his niece. Okay, yeah, but Mary Madeline or something like that. But she had a really good job with a global health initiative that was formed by the Gates, funded by the Gates Foundation, and that wasn't mentioned too much. But if you remember the odd thing where they lived, and I've been on the Chesapeake Bay. I mean, I don't know why anybody would ever take a canoe out of the Chesapeake Bay. It's really choppy waters most of the time. But supposedly a kickball with her 8-year-old son, a kickball was kicked into the bay. They lived on the bay. And she decides to take a canoe and her 8-year-old son, why would you bring your 8-year-old son with you? To go retrieve a kickball. And they both drown. I find that very strange. And I'm telling you, before that moment, there was never anything. Kennedy, it was right after that, RFK Jr., literally the next day, he lashed out at Bill Gates for the first time. And then he just didn't let up for a while. He had not done that before. I have a feeling that they were connected. Now, that niece, along with his sister, two of his sisters, I think, wrote an op-ed like the month before. And it wasn't published till after the niece's death. It's very odd they held it back till then. And talked about, I think the headline was, we love our cousin or whatever, but we hate what he's doing. And they talked about how irresponsible he was and everything. It was really a hit piece on him. And I don't know how many people remember that, but I talked about the death in my book. I don't know how many people have, but I mean, I wonder if he wondered, but he started attacking Bill Gates right after that.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, no, it's just so I think, he okay, I'm saying David Knight, I guess, talked about this. Raybo said, David, I assume he's talking about David Knight. Also read my story on how I took care of my mom during COVID, take immunosuppressants, didn't wear gloves or masks, and never contracted it. Yeah, I mean, the people that get, vaccinated over and over again, boosted, they're the ones that caught it. But again, they were taking the home test kits. That was the Carrie Mullis,
Mhm.
the 90% false
PCR.
positive spreads. Wasn't
Right.
that the test they were taking, the PCR test?
Yes. Yeah, I remember Carrie Mullis saying that you could find anything with that PCR quote unquote test. It's really a process or a procedure to
Exactly.
amplify tissue, and that it could be used to make, for example, insulin that you could take, that you could amplify or remanufacture insulin or products like that with it, but that it's a duplication or magnification measure.
Yeah, it was never intended to be a diagnostic
Right.
test the way that Fauci set it up. And I honestly think that's probably why Fauci co-opted it from the very beginning, because it was really Fauci was head of NIH since 1984, and 1986 was the year that Carrie Mullis got the award for the test, and the NIH was using it almost immediately. So I feel like there's a connection there. Like Fauci knew the potential of PCR, and he had to use it for his own ill means rather than allow it to be used as a tool to study DNA the way that it was intended.
And then Carrie Mullis has also said in interviews that Anthony Fauci is basically an idiot or clueless, that he couldn't debate anybody, or he's never practiced medicine.
I'd love to circulate that clip.
Those are great interviews. Yeah. I think that to a large degree, we have to also remember when we're criticizing RFK Jr., and I understand he's not, I don't agree with him on everything. People say, oh, he's for the Green New Deal. He said the climate people should get 3 hots in a cot. Blah. I know all that. I get it. However, on the health things, I agree with him. Well, he's the best we've got, definitely by far, and he has a good track record. And I know I'm going to hear it from a few people that I'm friends with about this, but that's okay. But I think we have to remember also that this is an information war, and most of the people that we know, the reason they aren't listening to us about these things when we're trying to warn them is that they believe steadfastly that that's the way to go, that the drive-by birthday party during COVID, that was the way to stay well. To me, it was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. People driving by, the birthday person standing in the yard with a mask on, waving at people driving by. I mean, it wasn't complete insanity to me, but those people thought that they were staying safe, and they still do. And they're still jabbing their kids and seeing that their grandkids and their loved ones are safe and protected. And they have bought it hook, line, and sinker. So I heard you talk about was I listening to somebody else, or was it you, Zoe, that was talking about testing humans to seeing which crisis they react to and more strongly, and that they tested some people to see if they react more to, say, weather catastrophes or earthquakes or pandemics or war, and they found that pandemics put people in fear, and they become obedient. So I thought I heard that on another podcast today. I think.
Yeah, it wasn't me, but that's something that I would talk about if I had looked into that.
Derek Bros. It was Derek Bros said it today on a.
I was on air with him for the first time ever earlier today. The Last American Vagabond and Derek were doing a fundraiser.
Yeah, he's talked about it on that fundraiser.
Oh, I wasn't on for that part, I guess.
Well, they were on for quite a long time, but that's where I heard it just earlier today. So I think they call it the parasite pressure test against humans to see what kind of pressure works best as far as
I read a few psychological studies talking about how do you control a population, and it has to be like an invisible enemy. And so a virus is the perfect invisible enemy that you can make everyone think is all present. And the people have to think they're in danger and that the government will keep them safe. And that's the best way is to weaponize the healthcare system and use those smiling white coats to, gain their trust, I guess.
Right.
And that's really where we're at, is the censorship is all directed at if you do anything, if you say anything that takes trust away from the white coats, away from the healthcare system, away from public regulatory authorities for health, that's a no-no. You can't do that. That gets you censored and told that that's medical misinformation.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
and
Milgram experiment was the white coat experiment where remember that one, Dawn or Zoe?
Yeah.
The Milgram
That was the
experiment?
Milgram experiment.
Yeah.
Yep. And I actually read that in the Fauci book too. And it pointed out that not only was it an authoritarian figure, it was a man in a white coat. So it was a guy who looked like a doctor telling the subject to hit the button that will electrocute said subject all the way up into a lethal dose. And what we saw was basically the Milgram experiment was used on hospitals for the protocols, and doctors pushed the button.
Yep.
They had more trouble with Pavlov's dogs, I think. I mean, we didn't pass that one. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're able to be that susceptible to propaganda. But at this point, we should be looking 2026 now. You're talking about 4 years, I guess, really after COVID started petering out with the hysteria. But we're ready for the next. If they throw another one out there will be more skeptics. There won't be quite as many, but you will still have the overall majority accepting it. I still walk around and see people with masks everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why do you have do you like this look or something? I don't.
I almost wore this to the dentist as one of the t-shirts that I made. And it's a guy in his car wearing a mask by himself.
Yes,
and
I saw a lot of those.
It's the fluoride.
Oh yeah, I wanted to stop, and I saw many of those people and say, explain what's going on here. What's the thought process? There's nobody else here. Why do you have a mask on? But you saw plenty of people doing that, and they didn't need a study to tell me that people, obviously, when you talk about health, that is the scariest thing, and that obviously showed in spades during COVID, because they were willing to. At this point, they should be acknowledging how stupid they were. The thing when I remember back then, I gave up talking about it in public because it didn't do any good. It just embarrassed my kids, and what was the point? Especially when I'm talking to some retail clerk or something, like he's setting the policy. But I don't have the CEO there to talk to. But when the restaurant thing, where they let you go to restaurants and you had to wear your mask, into the restaurant, and then you could take it off at the table. That's the what?
Yeah.
What is?
I challenged them on that one day.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So there was this church in the town that I lived in. This was like actually right after one of the fires, which they all thought was like a not a natural fire. It was before all the Maui stuff, but we think that it was probably a dew at that point too. This was in Southern Oregon. And so at a church, they did this like freedom thing. They had a bunch of speakers come out, and there was this Mexican joint that everyone went to for lunch. And every other day they made you wear a mask to go in there. The staff had to wear a mask, but for the freedom medical thing day, they made it so their staff didn't have to wear the masks, and nobody had to wear a mask to go in there and eat just for that day. Well, I lived in that town. And so I thought, well, if they're going to do that, then I'll go support them. I'll go spend money there every day versus anywhere else, and they'll get my money. So I went in there like the following week to order something, and everything was to go again. They had the masks back. And I walked in and I said, hey, can I order something? I was just going to stand there and order it and then take it back home. So I wasn't even going to sit down. But I walked in without a mask, and they all looked scared. Like, oh, God, no mask. And they're like, we're going to need you to put a mask on. I'm like, I'm not doing that just to order. Those people right there are sitting there without a mask on about 10 feet from me. You think they're going to kill you? Like, you did this last week, and no one's dying, so everything's fine. And I'm like, I don't understand why there's some magic spell where I'm going to get you sick standing here right now. But if I sit in a table, then stupid. I'm not going to get you sick. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And that was the last time I ever ordered from them. They never got my money after that. They did make me go outside to wait for my food because I wasn't wearing a mask that day.
Well, I talked about masking the truth. We learned that when Fauci was quoted in a book, it was published around that time, about how he found that so hilarious, that this stupid thing about people wearing masks and then taking them off when they had to, he thought that was hilarious. Of course, he was the one pushing it. But I mean, these people are psychotic. I
was going to say that's a psychopath move right there.
Yes. That's what it is, and we know the 6 feet thing. That was just the guy in England or whatever just came. Well, we just came up with it. I mean, there's no
Arbitrary.
science behind that. It made no sense, and so many things they did, and they should be apologizing. They should be embarrassed about it. They're not. They're not. And if it happens, if they decide to have another one of these fake pandemics, it's gonna, it'll be the same thing. I hope they don't clamp down on people like us
They're
more, but
trying. They're trying. They're
Yep.
running that subclade X narrative right now in the news, and they're saying, "Oh, everyone's dying in the UK." And I'm hearing that the hospitals here are full, but it's generally because they pushed the vaccine, and so people have chronic conditions and things that are boiling over, and that's what they're going to the hospital for, and the hospitals can't deal with it. So there is this like facade of a pandemic happening, and so they're saying worst flu in years and years. But nobody's buying it. Del Bigtree was laughing on the high wire about it. I laughed about it. Even the people in the UK, they don't seem to be buying it. When you see any posts on Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, but my friends tell me that all the reactions are the laughing face. So nobody's buying this new pandemic thing. So that's actually good. I think we're moving the needle in that people aren't really going to buy it quite as easily as they did before.
well, I agree with you. I hope that's true. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to make sure. Zoe, did we miss anything? Anything you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to talk about because we only have a few minutes left here?
No, I got to talk about everything. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can put on the screen here. I have a manual order form. So if anyone wants to mail in an order, because I do have a PO box that you can do that. I just have to find the actual.
If you put it in the chat, I can put it on the screen. If you type it in the chat or whatever.
There we go. Okay. Can I add it to stage? Nope, it won't let me. It won't let me. It's a screenshot. It won't let me attach anything. It's not like a link.
If you have an address or a URL or something, just type it in the chat address and I'll put it on screen.
There's no URL. It's an image file, and it won't let me attach an image. So never mind. I guess I can just tell people. So I have a PO box, and if you want to mail me an order for either this USB drive is $15, and you get the ebook, the audiobook, which is narrated by myself, and you get a little movie trailer, or you can get the print book, which right now is only available on eBay. So if you want to pay digital, then you can go to eBay, just put in the COVID code, and this will come up, or put in Thrill Kill Medical Cult, and it will come up, and it is me selling this on eBay. So if you want to get it there, otherwise get out a pen, and it's 1109 Southwest 1st Street and that's Suite F, PMB 654. That's in Canby, Oregon, CANBY, and the zip is 97013. So at least you can rewind that, and if you didn't get it.
Well, that's the best way people can help you. You don't have a Give Send Go or anything like that set up?
No, Give Send Go shut me down. Ko-Fi shut me down. Stripe and I are not friends. The only place I can actually get money is Substack. And actually, you can get the book on Substack. I'm doing it like one chapter at a time. So you'd have to be a subscriber over many months to get the whole thing. I haven't even put the whole book out there. I'm on chapter 8 right now. So that is ZOWE. Make sure to add the W because it's actually an acronym. So ZOWE.substack.com. And if you become a paid subscriber, that's the only thing I put behind the paywall is the book. All my other articles are free. So you can definitely follow me, like, share. That helps for sure. And you don't have to pay anything. But if you do want to get the book, the ways are to join my Substack, go to eBay, or or mail in an order.
And you haven't had any trouble with subs getting paid on Substack through Stripe?
Yes, but only because of, it's sort of Stripe, sort of my bank. The issue with Stripe is they make you do facial scanning to change your bank information. which is one reason why I haven't opened any more Stripe accounts, because I don't want to do the facial scanning. I had it set up to go to a bank account, but that bank would put a fraud alert on my card for everything. I couldn't buy gas. I couldn't buy groceries. I couldn't buy anything. Every charge got flagged for fraud. So I would just have to go to the bank and get cash out. But I'm now in an area where they're so local to the area I was in before. They're not out here. So I don't really even have access to that bank anymore, even if I wanted to. So I either wire the money from that bank to my new bank account, because I can't update it with Stripe without doing the facial scanning thing. I haven't tried to do that with Stripe, and I did scan my face like 6 different times, and it didn't register. And they said I'm going to have to do it again. So basically, this is my response, Stripe. I'm not dealing with you anymore. Yeah. So for now, they're paying me on Substack, but I keep telling people, because of the recent changes on Substack, I'm getting shadow banned more. I'm getting buried more. And I don't know how long they're going to let me. They're going to keep paying me. So we'll see how long that lasts. Hopefully I can get the whole book out before they debank me entirely.
I hope you can. Then you shouldn't have to worry about that in this supposedly free country. It's awful. Karen Carpenter, any final thoughts?
It was great to see you, Zoe. This morning I was wondering, I wonder how Zoe's doing. And so it's really nice to see you and that you're hanging in there and you look good. The thumb drive is a great idea. There's a few people I know that have done that, going way back into conspiracy history. That's a good way to get it out. And plus we have copies then, that something that's a hard copy that we can use, ourselves later on. So thanks, Don. Everybody knows I think knows where to find me. Knights of the Storm on Rumble, Saturdays at 11 Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern.
Jason Barker and Ashley, the one namer. So a great show. And Zoe, again, Profile and Courage. My heart goes out to you. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope they stop screwing with you, but they probably won't, which means, as you said, you're over the target. So best of luck to you. We'll talk again, okay? Thanks, everybody, for listening to I Protest, and we'll see you next week, same time.
Thanks, Don.